It's good. I am back. It is day 6. So let me create L documento. Duplicator tomato. God, I'm so tired. My brain is not working. I just came back from football. I love football. Football is great. It's always good to run around and be fit. Anyways, so from last time, finished the model, or almost finished the model of the elephant. There was just one more thing I wanted to do. I wanted to realize that I wanted to see how, bro, I can't even speak. I wanted to address the address because I do not know how to spell address, which is great. So we're going to change the sketch. Fortunately, it's very easy. Parametric text. Alright, so we're going to change it to 2Ds because that's how you actually spell it. And then finish that. Now, I did actually end up printing this to test it, but I'm going to print it again just to show you guys the process. Alright, so I'm going to save that, and this is going to be called spelling because, yep. And it's ultimately meant to be a jewelry stand, and I guess you can just chuck like earrings in here, hang bracelets off the ears, rings on the trunk, and then whatever else can fit in the bowl. And it's all nice. I actually did print a prototype, which is how I got called out on the address mix. I gave it to one of my mates, and she was like, "Oh, isn't address spelled with 2Ds?" And I was like, "Yeah, right, but you didn't have to tell me that." Anyways, so how we do this is in Fusion, you go to make, click the object you want, click OK. You will have to select what software you're using, but in this case, it's Orca Slicer. Now, I highly recommend Orca just because it's so useful, and it looks exactly like the Bamboo Slicer, but it's not limited to just the Bamboo printers. And I got a lot of printers here: Bamboo Lab A1, A1 Mini, which is the one I have at home, and then Quiddy X Plus, which is what our Society University was sponsored by, and so they gave us a free printer. That was pretty cool. But you can always just add printers. It's really convenient. So they got a lot of printers. In fact, I was actually using it to look at just random printers I've never heard of. Anyway, so with this, I was actually considering scaling it up, because right now you can see the size here. It's what, 80 by 80. It says 84, but that's just a bit of tolerance. I was thinking, yeah, I could scale it up because Loki was a little small off memory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale, and there's a lot of things we can do. Right, first and foremost is move. This lets us move it in the X, Y, and Z axes. If we get out of that, escape, by default you can grab it and you can move it around. The great thing about it is if you try to move it upwards, it won't move up because it'll always try to keep the bottom side on the floor, or flat on the print bed, I should say. Now, we have rotate, which allows me to, in theory, change that. So if I want to print it on its head, I could. I'm not going to, but I could. Scale, which is the one I want to use, will let me essentially increase it in any direction. So this one uniformly scales it, but if I turn that off, I can squeeze it, stretch it, whatever I want. So I want a super thin elephant for some reason. I can do that. It kind of looks funny, Loki. Actually, I want to try something. Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. That looks very silly. Anyways, let me undo that. What I do want to do is uniformly scale it, and let's scale it to about 100. That scales it to about 170%. So 100 by 100. That's like 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. Why are you not 100? I want you 100. Oh my god, that's gonna slightly annoy me. Why is it not? I'm gonna turn off scale just so I can fix that. And it shouldn't make a difference realistically, but it does. Fix my OCD. Alright, cool. Elephant is ready. So what I'm going to do now is then click slice plate. And what this will do is it'll generate a preview, as you can see here, of how this thing is going to print. Now, all the green is the support, and all the blue space is what is either going to be overhanging or it's going to be on the build plate. Now, if it's on the build plate, that's actually good. That means it's going to be stuck. If it's overhanging, and not so good. So what I'm going to do is now go back into prepare, and I'm going to change the settings. So I'm going to turn off my supports. And the reason for that is because if you go in here, these ears are fine, but if we look under here, there's going to be supports that just come under through these gaps, and it's going to be a pain to remove later. Right, they're going to clog, as you can see if I push these a few layers up, they're going to clog the entirety of the print. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn it off. I could manually choose like, oh, I don't want supports, but if you look at the rest of the supports, they're only really doing the ears, and the ears can print themselves because there's not much of an overhang. The rest of the other bits of the support are going over to Sledge, but once again it's round, so it should be able to print itself. So we're going to turn off supports, and then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to change the strength, but we'll get to that when I slice it again. So now if we look at this, you can see a couple of things. All the red is the surface, so we can see I could change the surface how I want that to look, but I'm fine with that. Oh, actually, am I? We're going to come back to that. But you see we have this white line, which is what we call the seam, and it's going to create a line on the final print that's visible, and I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is go quality, seam position, and there's a couple you can do. Nearest is usually the fastest, and it also splits it randomly, or relatively randomly. But you end up with like these dots, and if you send it out, it doesn't look too bad, but it's not great. That's why usually the back or aligned is the best. So if we go aligned, you can see it all ends up in one spot, which is pretty convenient, but some people don't want that. But then there's also random. Random's not bad. It'll keep it very dotty, but it kind of messes with the texture. And the reason this exists is because, well, the print has to start and stop somewhere, and where that happens, it leaves a little extra plastic. So I'm going to go with nearest because this should decrease the printing time. And you can check the printing time here. All right, 16 minutes. Whereas if I were to go to something like aligned, sorry, that's meters. It's actually an hour. I was going to say 16 minutes. That seems a little too quick, but it's actually an hour and 50. So we're going to go to aligned, and we're going to see hour 52. Wait, was that? Not back. Wait, hour back was an hour 52. Oh, I wonder, maybe it doesn't change the time. How about that? I would have thought it made it a little faster. Maybe not. Maybe not. My mistake. Anyways, that's alright. I want it kind of random anyway. So that should be right. I can always sand it down. I have a little bit of sandpaper. And who doesn't love inhaling plastic fumes? Yeah, do not put 3D printers in your room. I had it went in my room for a while. I started getting headaches. Surprise, surprise. I took it out and I felt a lot better. Alright, now the last thing I'm going to do is adjust what we call the strength. And the strength is a couple things. So we can see the walls. I'm going to leave that for now. We can do the top layer, which is important. And we can do the infill. So first we're going to look at the infill. And the infill, the pattern I use is adaptive cubic because it gives it the most, it's up there with the highest universal strength laterally. And you can see it gives this like crisscross pattern, right? That's probably the best view of it. It's actually a cube turned on a diagonal. And because of that, it has great strength laterally, vertically, and I guess in all three axes. Gyro is also really good. I think gyro is actually slightly better for this. However, it does use more plastic. So it uses 56 grams. Whereas if I turn on adaptive cubic, this one uses 52 grams. And it's not much of a difference, but for bigger prints it is better. However, I want to use less plastic. So because this is not really it's not really that like necessary to use the plastic, I can turn it down. So I'm going to turn it down to 10, and that should turn down my print time and my filament. The filament not by much, but the print time does come down to an hour 46. Alright. Pardon me. And you can see that this sorry, I just had dinner, chicken curry. Love chicken curry. You can see that this goes down, or rather it gets spaced out, and so it becomes a lot easier to print. Alright. These are the main considerations you need to look for, like your infill pattern. By default, most of the time it's on rectilinear. Do not use rectilinear. It is probably the worst out of all of them because it actually overlays the path of the print head on itself, and so over time the small bits of plastic will push up against the print head, and because you're doing thousands and thousands of these motions, it can eventually wear out the printer. Whereas this one, it doesn't really overlap like that. Gyro is better because it does it all in one run, I believe, or maybe not, but adaptive cubic is still pretty good. Now the top surface pattern, this is more for aesthetic purposes. You can see if I zoom in, it's in straight lines, and that's because it's monotonic linear. This is the most consistent by far, but if I go with something like concentric, you can see it'll follow it'll follow these patterns of the geometry. And because I'm working with a circle, it actually does look really nice. So if I go Archimedean chords once again, it'll follow that circular pattern. And I low-key do want to try this out, but at the same time, I don't want to ruin my surface. So if I go rectilinear, no, not rectilinear, don't use rectilinear, monotonic line. And this is just flat. Honestly, it's not bad. Yeah, I've experienced issues going with Archimedean chords and concentric, so I'm gonna stick with monotonic lines. But I recommend when dealing with circles, try those two because they look nice. All right, so now I can preview it. I can see all this is good. Trust me, this is great. You'll see this will try to print a little bit in here. I'm not sure why, but it just wants to do that. That's fine. I'm happy for it to do that. I can remove it out with pliers at the end. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else I need to do. So quality, you can see there's a lot of settings. You can play around with these a lot. Most of them, because you're using a default setting, it will be able to detect. With that though, if you wanted to get the best results, I would recommend setting a filament. So for me, I'm not actually using the bamboo filament. I'm actually using filament from a place called Sediment. Really good for Australia, or specifically. Oh yeah, I guess all of Australia, but specifically for someone based in New South Wales, he's really good. He's relatively cheap, and got to support small local businesses. But the PLA silk profile is good enough for the plastic I'm using, which is red PLA silk. So this will turn out red, and I may eventually add a photo when it's done printing. So now, speed is also probably the best way to impact your quality, so do test that. But I believe you can actually do calibration tests like flow rate, pressure, but regardless, that's something you can play around with if you ever want to. For now, I'm going to print. So what it's going to do is going to bring up this screen, say, oh, it's this long, this much time. You can actually see it gives you a dollar cost value based on how much you put in. So this is technically costing me $1.43, which is pretty cool for something like this. It's very, very cheap. It's automatically set PLA black. I technically have red, but the color doesn't matter in the computer. Unless you're doing with a multicolor print, it really doesn't matter. Print is already set. I can just click send. It's going to send to my printer, which is nice. Very, very nice. 3, 2, 1, and it's going to jump to this screen here in device. And you can see now this is my printer. I can manually control it, but it's going to download the file from what I've sent, and then it's going to start doing all of its automatic calibrations. What's interesting here is it actually knows that I have red, so I must have set red on my actual printer, but not in the software. Now, I can look at what's going on if I click this button here. Oh, I have to wait, but it's going to show me nothing because it's actually very, very dark. But if I turn the lamp on, you can then see the printer. Or maybe not. I think the exposure from the light, yeah, there we go. It's kind of messing with it, but you can see that's my plastic box. I've got lots of rolls of plastic here, and that is the print bed. Now, this is not laggy. Oh, rather, it's not laggy just because of your screen. It is extremely slow because the camera they use is relatively low quality. I think you could, in theory, change that, but Bamboo is pretty proprietary, meaning they don't like you messing around with their stuff that much. However, they're kind of like Apple in that regard. Their product just works. Don't mess with it. They don't want you messing with it. But that's fine by me, honestly. I use the Apple ecosystem anyway, so I don't mind that. So now you see that it's lowering, and it's on like 1 frame every 2 seconds, so 0.5 frames a second. It's going to start doing the calibration tests and whatnot. Alright, that's all well and done. I will honestly call it here early, just because there's nothing else for me to do until that prints, and I will likely just use the final result as the thumbnail for this. So you can see it there, or maybe I'll even make a post or something. I don't know. What I should do is I should make, I'll let this down. So we're gonna print elephant. So I'm going to need a new project, which I'll think about. I was considering a couple of things like, I don't know, robot dog, because that could be fun. There was one other thing I was considering and I've forgotten. Oh yeah, coin holder, that was another thing I was thinking of. You don't have an idea in your head and it's just like, you've forgotten it. Whatever, it might come back to me. Coin holder, specifically Australian, because that's where I'm from. What was the last idea? That was the one I really liked. Whatever, it'll come back to me, I'll write it down. Anyways. And I may also make a vid make a highlight vid of the design process, because that would probably be far more entertaining to watch than like just all these uncut raw footages or uncut series of raw footage. Anyhow, adios.